A long, long time ago, before the world was as we know it, when gods still walked the earth and the stars whispered the fates of all, there lived two powerful titans, Cronus, the lord of time, and Rhea, the goddess of motherhood. Now, Cronus was not always a tyrant, but fear can turn even the mighty into monsters. You see, he had risen to power by overthrowing his own father, Uranus, with a sickle forged of stone. And as Uranus fell, he cursed Cronus with a dark prophecy. As I fall by your hand, so too shall you fall by your own child. The prophecy rooted itself deep in Cronus's heart, festering like a shadow. When Rhea bore their first child, Hestia, Cronus didn't hear a father's joy. He heard fate knocking. So to prevent that cursed future, he swallowed the newborn whole. One by one, the children came, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, and one by one, Cronus devoured them, imprisoning them in the dark pit of his belly. Rhea's cries echoed through the heavens, but no one dared challenge Cronus. By the time she was pregnant with her sixth child, something inside Rhea snapped. She could no longer stand by and watch her children vanish into her husband's madness. So she sought counsel from Gaia, the great Earth Mother, and together they devised a plan. When the time came and her baby was born, Rhea did not place him into Cronus' waiting hands. No, she wrapped a stone in cloth, shaped like a baby, and gave that to her husband instead. Greedy and suspicious, Cronus didn't even look. He swallowed the stone whole, thinking he'd bested fate once again. But the real child, a tiny and divine baby boy named Zeus, was whisked away across the sea to the island of Crete. There, hidden in a sacred cave on Mount Ida, he was raised in secret. The nymphs, gentle spirits of nature, cradled him with lullabies of wind and water, feeding him honey and milk from the magical goat Amalthea. And outside the cave, there were the Curetes, fierce warrior dancers, their bronze armor clashing like thunder. Every time baby Zeus cried, they beat their shields and stomped their feet in wild rhythm, masking the sound so Cronus would never hear. So the child who would challenge fate was not raised in a palace, but in a hidden cradle surrounded by myth and mountains. As the world turned and years passed, the boy grew strong. The spark of rebellion glinted in his eyes, and destiny stirred, waiting for the storm he would bring. Years passed beneath the ancient shadows of Mount Ida, and Zeus, no longer a child, grew into a tall, sharp-eyed young god, full of strength and purpose. Raised among the whispers of nymphs and the songs of the earth, he was not only wise in the ways of nature, but carried a fire within him, a fire born of injustice, of knowing his brothers and sisters still lived, trapped in the belly of a tyrant. The truth of who he was and what Cronus had done had never left him. And so, one day, with the weight of prophecy pressing on his shoulders and thunder crackling in his heart, Zeus left the cave that had been both his cradle and his cage. The time for hiding was over. The time to challenge fate had come. He journeyed across the lands and skies until he reached the halls of Metis, the titaness of wisdom. She, too, knew the old prophecy, and when Zeus knelt before her and asked for guidance, she gave him a gift, a potion, clever and strong, that could make even Cronus bring up what he had swallowed. Disguised as a cupbearer, Zeus entered Cronus's court. Imagine that, the young god, unknown to his father, standing right before him, his very downfall pouring wine into his cup. Cronus drank. Moments later, he roared in agony, clutching his stomach. And then, one by one, he vomited up Zeus's siblings, first Hestia, then Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Gods reborn, fully grown, their eyes wide as they tasted the air for the first time in years. And just like that, the prophecy took its first breath. Together, the six siblings stood side by side, no longer helpless, no longer hidden. They raised their hands to the heavens and declared war against the Titans. Thus began the Titanomachy, a war that shook the cosmos for 10 years. Mount Olympus became the stronghold of the young gods, while Mount Othrys held the thrones of the Titans. The skies turned red with fire, the seas churned with rage, and the very earth split under the weight of divine battle. But the Titans were powerful, and as the years dragged on, the war seemed endless. That is, until Zeus remembered those who had once been cast into Tartarus, the Cyclops, and the wild Hecatoncheires, beings of unimaginable power. He descended into the black pit of the underworld and freed them, just as he had once been freed. The Cyclops, grateful, gifted Zeus his greatest weapon, the thunderbolt, a bolt of lightning that could shatter mountains and silence gods. With it in hand and his siblings at his side, Zeus roared into battle. Lightning tore across the sky, Poseidon's trident split the seas, and Hades brought fear from the shadows. The Titans faltered. In a final clash that lit up the heavens like 1,000 suns, Zeus hurled his thunderbolt into Cronus' chest. The mighty Titan fell, and the old world fell with him. The war was over. The reign of the Titans had ended. The age of the Olympians had begun. But what would they do with the world now in their hands? And how would they rule? That is the next chapter of Zeus's tale. The battlefield had gone still. Smoke curled into the sky like the last breath of the old world, and the cries of war faded into silence. Zeus, his chest rising with the weight of victory, stood among his brothers and sisters at the edge of a new era. The Titans were no more. The great Cronus had fallen, imprisoned deep within Tartarus, the abyss even the gods feared. Many of the other Titans followed, chained in that endless pit under guard of the 100-handed hecatoncures, the very monsters Cronus had once cast away. And so, standing in the ruins of the old order, the Olympians had to ask themselves, what now? It was Zeus who stepped forward first. With the same voice that once cried in a hidden cave, he now spoke like thunder that rolled across the world. He didn't claim the throne out of hunger for power, but because he knew, deep down, that someone had to shape this new world into something better. And so, with the sacred river Styx as witness, the gods cast lots to decide the realms of their rule. Zeus drew the skies and heavens, the realm of storms and stars. Poseidon claimed the seas, vast and deep, full of mystery and rage. Hades received the underworld, where souls journey after death, dark, silent, and eternal. The earth itself was left as a shared domain, where all gods could roam. Zeus rose to Mount Olympus, the tallest peak in the world, and there he built a palace of marble and gold. From this mountain, high above mortal lands, he ruled as king of the gods. But being king was not just about sitting on a throne, it was about keeping the balance. Zeus watched over the skies and punished those who broke oaths. He was the protector of justice, the keeper of order, and the wielder of thunder. When mortals prayed for rain or trembled at a storm, they were speaking his name. Still, not all was peaceful. His siblings, though loyal, were powerful in their own right. Poseidon, proud and unpredictable, often challenged Zeus's rule. Hades, quiet and watchful, remained distant beneath the earth, ruling a shadowy realm few dared enter. And Hera, his sister and later his wife, became both his partner and his fiercest rival. The gods began to grow into their own destinies. Temples were built, sacrifices made, and stories whispered across the wind. But even as Zeus held the heavens in his hands, new challenges stirred. Giants rose in rebellion. Mortals grew clever and bold. And love, wild, chaotic love, would soon lead Zeus down tangled paths, for even kings of gods are not immune to desire. And so, while the throne of Olympus stood tall, Zeus' journey was far from over. Though Zeus ruled the heavens with justice and might, his heart, his heart, was a tempest all its own. For all his thunder and wisdom, Zeus was a creature of passion, and love was both his blessing and his curse. His first wife was Metis, the Titaness of wisdom, the very one who had helped him trick Cronus. She was clever, gentle, and pregnant when Zeus heard a troubling new prophecy. The child of Metis will surpass its father. Sound familiar? Fearful of repeating his father's fate, Zeus swallowed Metis whole, just as Cronus had once swallowed his own children. But unlike his father, this was not the end. For within him, Metis still lived, still thinking and whispering. And from that union, Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, was eventually born, sprung fully armored from Zeus's forehead, a fierce warrior with her mother's intellect and her father's power. Next came Themis, goddess of law and order. With her, Zeus fathered the Horae, seasons, and Morae, fates, the keepers of time and destiny. Then Eurynome, mother of the three graces, goddesses of beauty and joy. There were many others, Demeter, Mnemosyne, Leto, and from each love, a new god or goddess was born. Apollo and Artemis, radiant twins of music and the hunt. Hermes, the swift messenger. Persephone, the spring maiden, and many, many more. But none of these stories compare to the firestorm that followed his marriage to Hera, his sister, his queen, and his most relentless rival. Now Hera, regal and proud, was not one to be taken lightly. She resisted Zeus for a long time. He wooed her with trickery, once even disguising himself as a shivering bird to gain her sympathy. When she finally agreed to marry him, the whole of Olympus rejoiced. But the joy was short-lived. Zeus, ever wandering, found his eyes often straying. Nymphs, mortals, even other goddesses all seemed to catch his fancy. And Hera? Oh, she burned. Her jealousy was legendary. She punished his lovers with cruel curses, twisted fates, and divine wrath. Even Zeus's own children were not always spared. There was Io, turned into a cow. Callisto, transformed into a bear. Semele, destroyed by Zeus's own glory. Yet, from these unions, the world received gods and heroes. Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy. Heracles, the mighty hero destined for greatness. Perseus, slayer of monsters. Through love and betrayal, through fire and storm, Zeus shaped the heavens not just with lightning, but with bloodlines. His children roamed the earth and skies, shaping myths, founding cities, and carrying the legacy of Olympus far and wide. But love for Zeus was never simple. It was a force like lightning, brilliant, wild, and dangerous. And for all the power he held, he was never truly able to tame it. Still, Olympus stood, the gods watched, and the world turned, ever beneath the gaze of Zeus, ruler of all. For all his thunder and charm, Zeus's reign was anything but peaceful. Each lover, each child, each broken vow had ripple effects, not just among mortals, but among the gods themselves. His countless affairs ignited Hera's fury time and time again, and though she remained his wife, the tension between them crackled like a brewing storm. But it wasn't only Hera who grew restless. The gods began to question Zeus' rule. One day, atop Olympus, whispers turned into conspiracies. Hera, Poseidon, and Athena, yes, even his daughter, joined together to plot against him. They had grown weary of his arrogance, his unchecked passion, his swift judgments that sometimes favored mortals over gods. Together, they bound Zeus in enchanted chains, stealing his thunderbolt and trapping him in his own palace. The skies grew silent. The earth held its breath. But not all gods turned on him. The sea goddess Thetis, along with the giant Briareus, one of the hecaton chairs with 100 hands, heard of the plot. In the dead of night, they crept into Olympus and freed Zeus from his bonds. When Zeus awoke, the heavens trembled with his rage. One by one, he summoned the rebels. He hung Hera from the sky, bound in golden chains until she wept with shame. Poseidon and Athena, powerful as they were, bent the knee and begged forgiveness. Zeus forgave them, but never forgot. Still, trials came not only from within Olympus. Deep beneath the earth, the defeated Titans stirred in their prison. And far in the distance, from the edges of the world, new threats were rising. The giants, born from the blood of Uranus and the earth itself, rose in a second great war, the Gigantomachy. Enormous, savage, and hateful toward the gods, the giants attacked Olympus, seeking to end Zeus' reign. The battle raged across mountains and seas. Lightning clashed with boulders, arrows rained from the sky, and the earth split open with every blow. Zeus fought with fury unmatched, but the giants were powerful beyond belief. It was only with the help of Heracles, his mortal son by Alcmene, that the tide turned. The gods and demigods, side by side, finally drove the giants back into the abyss. But the cost was heavy. Even gods cannot escape fate forever. Prophecies whispered that one day, a child born of Zeus would destroy the order he created. Just as Cronus once feared Zeus, so too did Zeus begin to wonder. Could his own downfall come from one of his children? And so, like his father before him, Zeus began to fear the very power he had spread across the world. He grew more cautious, more calculating. He judged mortals with a heavier hand, sometimes striking them down with storms, sometimes raising them to glory. Cities prayed for his favor. Kings claimed descent from him, and yet, always, the balance teetered. The world Zeus had built of love and wrath, justice and judgment, stood strong, but it was never safe. Time passed. Though Zeus's rule held firm, the world beneath Olympus began to shift. The golden age of heroes had bloomed and withered. The songs once sung in his name became softer, more distant, more like stories than prayers. Even gods cannot stop the turning of the world. Zeus, the all-seeing, began to sense it, the slow unraveling of the divine era. Mortals no longer feared the thunder as they once did. The fires of Olympus still burned, but with less warmth. Fewer sacrifices reached the altars. New beliefs rose in distant lands. The balance he had fought so hard to shape between gods and mortals was slipping. Yet Zeus did not rage. Instead, he watched. He watched as Heracles, his mortal son, ascended to Olympus and earned a seat among the gods, a rare gift granted to one who had suffered and risen. He watched as Perseus, Helen, Achilles, and other half-divine children lived out their fates, some in glory, some in sorrow. These were his legacy too, written not in marble or lightning, but in blood. As generations passed, the age of mortals grew stronger. Fewer heard the voice of Zeus in the thunder. Fewer still looked to the heavens for judgment. And so, in time, the gods began to withdraw. Not all at once, not with finality, but slowly like the setting of the sun. They retreated into the high places of the world, the hidden caves, the peaks wreathed in mist, the deep waters untouched by man. And Zeus returned to the heights of Olympus, where the stars still shone and the winds whispered old names. He became a presence, not a ruler. A force of law, not a thunder-wielding figure to be feared. And yet, he was never truly gone. Even now, when a storm splits the sky with fire, when justice arrives like a blow struck from above, when love leads to greatness and ruin alike, that's Zeus. Not in body, but in spirit. His stories echo still, in the clash of kings, in the rise of empires, in the fear of power left unchecked, and the awe of something greater than oneself. He is myth, and myth is eternal. And so ends the tale of Zeus, not with death, for gods do not die, but with transcendence. He began as a child hidden in a cave, crying beneath clashing shields. He became the thunder, the law, the king. He loved fiercely, ruled absolutely, and faced betrayal from those closest to him. He birthed gods, fathered heroes, and shaped the fate of the cosmos. And though the world may no longer worship him as before, his fingerprints remain on every tale of power, rebellion, love, and justice. Because every storm remembers Zeus. And in the heart of the storm, if you listen closely, you just might hear his laughter.